All right, guys. Our next guest has a fascinating history as a supplier and pioneer in the field of performance-enhancing drugs, a witness for the FBI and USADA. He has since turned his life around and is now a strength and conditioning coach, is known for his great work with Juan Manuel Marquez in leading him to victory over Manny Pacquiao. One of the most knowledgeable and credible men on the subject. He joins us to discuss Jon Jones' recent failed drug test at UFC 214. He is Angel Memo Heredia Hernandez. Angel, welcome to the program. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm honored to be on your show.
It is a pleasure. We are very excited to speak to you. Before we even talk about Jones, I just have to quickly mention that we have absolutely loved your 2008 interview with the German outlet Spiegel, I think it's called. We see it pop up every few months on different forums and websites, and in general, people find it to be one of the most insightful and eye-opening interviews when it comes to sort of PEDs in sports. Just curious, were you aware that people still to this day go back and read that almost 10-year-old interview?
Well, it was a good interview. It was an interview that I had to really expose because I had to really expose the truth. There's a lot of situations where people has been, at the time they were misled. Obviously today they have been misled a lot as far as the testing procedures and how many drugs and PEDs are still untraceable today. And imagine, so far the testing has advanced a lot, but we're talking about the interview that happened in 2009. So there was a lot of stuff that were not traceable at the time. I was able to help the FBI. I was able to help the USADA to uncover some of those drugs and some of those increasing the possibility of detection as far as when to analyze the sample, when to take the sample, when the athletes normally would take these certain drugs, and that'll help a lot. And still today, I mean, it's gotten better, but there's a few things and few situations that are not as specifically well done,
Mm-hmm. And we're fascinated to talk to you about Jon Jones. Just quickly on that, with those situations, what do you think is the major issue right now when it comes to the world of testing and PEDs in sports?
Well, it's very interesting, the case of Jon Jones. I'm looking at everything, the timeline, and basing on what the media has said about his case, what his manager has said on the case, and based on everything, and based on the results of what he, previously, my understanding, he previously got tested 21 days before the actual test where he came out positive. That was around 20 or 21 days. He was tested, I believe he was tested in urine and blood, and he came out negative. So 21 days or 20 days later, he came out to a testing procedure, which is at the end of the fight, and he came out positive. Now, what really gets my attention, and certainly this is my opinion, it's that the protocol that WADA is utilizing today, for the detection of Turinabol, it's implementing it basing on now they can detect 6 different particular metabolites out of new metabolites out of Turinabol, which one of those metabolites, which is the M3, it lasts up to 7 weeks it lasts up to seven weeks in the body. So, and I don't say this is not my opinion. These words comes from the guy who designed that particular testing method. So, frankly, based on what he's saying, how would Jon Jones test negative 20 to 21 days towards the day he got tested positive, and he be tested negative, and then he tested positive? You understand my point?
Yeah. So I guess
in other words, in my opinion, if he would have been using way before then, eventually would have been positive on the 21 day testing before the fight, and then he was negative and he came out positive. And now I don't really question the testing or anything like that, but frankly, that test itself, it lacks of credibility for a lot of reasons. We can go on, and I can be very specifically when in terms of chemistry, but I don't want to mislead the people that listen to us. It's just the fact that they detecting these 6 different metabolites, and one of them stays longer than up to 7 weeks. But the most intriguing part of it is that some of those metabolites, they're not really confirmed that it's actually coming from the Turinabol structure. So there's a lot of questioning. There's a lot of questions that makes you wonder. Like I said, I've seen it all in the sport. I've seen guys who cheat. I've seen guys who doesn't want to cheat and yet still get caught for mistakes. And I've seen analytical procedures that gone wrong. So at this point, in my opinion, I really I want to believe the only thing that could have caused the positive test for this guy could have been the supplement that had been contaminated. And for that reason, it's a big issue happening in the United States. There's a lot of supplement industry that has been going into different legal lawsuits because cross-contamination, supplementation, mislabeling, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a possibility. There's a possibility there. The other one, I don't think Jon will be that naive to, knowing that he's been targeted testing by USADA, knowing that he had been random urine and blood, and he would take something, says, for example, 14 days before the fight, knowing that he would be random testing again, blood and urine, and it would be definitely target testing means that they go with you with every specific testing they can, everything they got available. So that makes you wonder. That makes you have to give the guy what do you call the expression they say in America? You have to hear his side, and not only what he says, but I believe what they're doing is they're waiting on the B sample opening, and we still gotta wait for that because my understanding, this is just what I heard. I'm not gonna say sources or anything like that. That one of his samples was retested 5 times until they pretty much got the positive finding. So it's very accurate, in my opinion, to retest the sample 5 times, one particular sample, to try to find out or confirm. The question that brings into us is, did they really retest the A sample 5 times to confirm the result or to try to find him positive? Because it does happen with some analytical procedures, you can be in the middle between negative and positive, and yet when you keep trying to push for that result, you eventually will get it. You understand? So that brings a lot of questions. I mean, and in my opinion, my very personal opinion, I don't really think that this guy would take something 20 to 21 days towards the fight, knowing that he's going to be random test. So I think it's more into this situation. I want to believe that perhaps there's a protocol is not as bright as what it's pretty much stating about, because there's a lot of other scientists that agree with me. The testing itself is not really 100% credible. So I don't know if you understand who designed the test. There was a doctor who, you've seen the movie Icarus. That's the guy who designed the specific testing method. So what adapted it, but there's not really enough data or enough researching into this particular method of detection. So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions that obviously pops in our minds. But as my opinion, very personal opinion, I believe that he's not the guy that would do such a mistake like that. I mean, knowing that he has too much to lose for a chip-chop steroid, Just my opinion, very personal.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there about what you said, Angel. We obviously saw on your Facebook page that you'll actually be taking part in Jon Jones's legal defense team as an expert witness and advisor on his, on the testing analytical procedures done by USADA. Just curious, how and when did this come about that you're now going to be part of Jon Jones's defense team? Were you approached by Jones's team, or did you reach out to them?
They reached out to me, and they wanted to hear my expertise on this, and obviously, I'm the kind of guy who's neutral in everything. Like, in other words, I'm the kind of guy who doesn't like to just say that I'm fighting doping and believe that everyone is dope. No, we have to see the facts. We have to see evidences. We have to see how the test procedures were done, who really analyzed those procedures, and chain of custody. There's so many things that could go wrong when it comes to testing a sample. So yes, I was contacted by his manager, and I was happy to assist and provide what my internal knowledge into testing procedures. And obviously, as you guys said it, I worked so many years. I mean, I helped the USADA anti-doping cause for years. Obviously, they can never talk about me loudly because I'm still a federal witness. So they can't really. There's a contract line where they can't talk about witnesses. So obviously, I don't get the credit as much when it comes to the media, but definitely it's in there. They know, and I know that USADA knows me. I mean, I worked with Trevor Taggart when he was when he was only the consular. He was not even the headquarters head member of the USADA. So just take a moment and look back how far that back is. This is way before 2004 to 2010. That's when I pretty much took over as a head member of the USADA. So.
You and Jeff Novitzky, you guys have had a relationship ever since 2002, and you speak with him regularly. Have you had a chance to speak to him about the situation yet?
Well, last time I spoke to him was probably, I would say, about a year ago. He wanted me to help him out with the this is before he was he was hired, but to become the assessor for the UFC. He wanted me to help him out in boxing, and we sat down and we had a 2-hour meeting. I remember we spoke about different subjects, and one of those subjects was boxing, how the testing itself was not sufficient for the sport, and how it was very important to establish a proper testing, because obviously you were playing with two people's lives on the ring. So that was something that was concerning the government. But as we get on, I told him that definitely, I gave him some advices, and we spoke literally about, can't really say what we spoke a lot, but we talk about the subject and other things. But then he took over he resigned as a federal agent, I believe, and he took over the UFC. And ever since then, he did approach me to talk to him, but I'm not involved in UFC in any way. So there's not much really I can help him. Obviously, when it comes to what drugs are available, what drugs are not detectable at this point, what WADA has lied about us that they can be detected and stuff forth. Yes, I can always come forward with that, and I think I'm not the only one that can say this. But frankly, UFC is doing a good job, in testing, very aggressive testing. But we also have to sit down for a moment and wait and think. Also, there's always possibilities of mistakes in the laboratories. They've been mistakes known that has happened in the past, but you don't hear much about them because most of the time they settle under the ramps. In other words, they don't come out publicly. They sign an agreement, and that's it. You sign a confidential agreement, and nothing is heard about it, because any testing agency or organization doesn't want you to know that they made a mistake, because otherwise they will lose a lot of credibility. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to take a chance to go and do the testing with them when you can go with somebody else and so forth. But at the end of the day, the anti-doping is becoming a big business. It's not really. It's helpful for the sport. It helps, and it helps a lot, but it's also becoming a big business. So, at the end of the day, they're trying to make their money. They're trying to get their contracts, and sometimes they wait to a point where they think everyone is cheating. And at the end of the day, there's athletes who are not cheating. Unfortunately, they get in the crosspath of these on these harmful events with contamination present, ignorance comes into it, and they get popped, and they always been treated like cheaters. So I think it's unfair too. We have to also give credit to those athletes that they're trying to have the sport, at least trying to keep it clean. But like I said, it's hard. Boxing is going through a process that testing is being implemented, but it's not enough. How could you call random testing and being tested once every 2 months? Is that really random to you? Or having a random contract where you only get tested a couple times and then you don't get tested for 3 weeks? Is that really random? My point is, they're leaving enough time, enough gap openings for anybody to cheat. In other words, there's a lot of substances you can use in between those 3 weeks and get away with it. So my point is, testing is important, it's needed, but also they have to take responsibilities for some issues that they could occur. We have to sit down and wait what the situation is with Jon as far as the B sample, and then we go from there, because we have to see what the B sample ratings are. We got to see if there's any specific changes into the sample urine, and then you go from there. We can't sit down here yet and accuse him, because so far he's tested positive in A sample, but we don't know anything about the B sample yet.
I was going to say, what are you expecting from that B sample? Because my understanding is the B sample, it's the same bit of urine that Jon would have submitted on the 28th. And like you mentioned, with obviously USADA, it's in their best interest to give the most reliable test results. So if if the A sample is positive and the B sample comes back negative, kind of goes against the kind of message they want to send, and it makes them look bad. So what are you expecting from this B sample? Are you concerned?
Yeah, basically it is what it is, right? USADA and WADA, those are two organizations that have been conducting fighting sports. They rely on WADA. USADA doesn't do any testing itself. So what they do is that they do the testing or the urine sample collection, and they send them to WADA laboratories.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that conduct the testing procedures, the analytical testing procedures, and so forth. So basically, the urine sample, it's been taken, and basically the B sample comes from the same sample. So I mean, normally it's very rare that a B sample would test negative, but if the B sample comes up with different gravity numbers or pH numbers or different things that could raise the flags to improper testing, then definitely that would raise questions. So like I said, there's not, even USADA has a very credible business because they attach to the United States laws, federal laws, which means it's good for the athlete as well because you're also protected by those federal laws because they get money by the Congress. Therefore, you also got the right to protect yourself. You got the right to fight any analytical finding that you might be questioning about. So, frankly, it's very important to see what would happen in B sample. I mean, I don't want to say that it'll come out negative. I don't want to say it'll come out positive. We have to sit down and wait, and we certainly would know. But like I said, it's kind of weird that a metabolite that will stay up to 7 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that comes positive on fight night, but it didn't come out positive 20 days before that particular test. That makes you wonder. Obviously they're gonna say, well, maybe he drank a lot of water. They're gonna come out and say all this kind of stuff to pretty much not to take responsibility of this factor. But the fact is that if you are sitting down and applying protocols that are not scientifically proven, you are losing credibility. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when they say, EPO is detectable, all this is that, and that. At the end of the day, we know that EPO is not detectable if you do microdosing, if you do certain things. There's several kinds of EPOs available in the market that still remain very hard to detect, pretty much impossible. So, frankly, who are they trying to lie to? I mean, they have to be coming forward and say, this is what it is. Why use a protocol that is not really done proper research or data? Why implement it? Just like they did with Millennium. We go back to Millennium. Look what happened. They adapted that protocol for the particular testing, and then when they realized that the actual drug had a longer half-life, they had to retract themselves, and they had to really, in other words, slap the hands of the athletes were pretty much were embarrassed and they were accused of doping. That's just to show you that at one point, testing laboratories or agencies, they collect a lot of money over the world. For example, WADA collects a lot of millions per year. So obviously they have to justify to the public they're doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yet those guys travel first, world-class level. They stay at a nice five-star hotels, beautifully nice kind of salaries. My point is, there's good things about him, and there's also a few things that we have to question. Simple. That's just me as being critical because, like I said, I've seen it all in the world. I've seen it all in terms of doping. I've seen it all in terms of unjustifiable cases. I've seen justifiable cases. I mean, you name it. So I'm just giving you my bare opinion on this,
Yeah, for sure. And I want you to weigh in on a theory, Angel, because this is something that a lot of fans are talking about, and I want to sort of see what you think, if it's plausible, if it's totally debunkable. Obviously with Jon Jones, he's passing these tests early in the month, and then he's failing them later in the month. So the conclusion a lot of people are drawing is that what if he was, say, taking something and there were masking agents, and then whatever somebody, this is all obviously hypothetical, if somebody gave him something and the masking agents were, say, a cheap knockoff, or they gave him a cheap knockoff of whatever, say, design a steroid they hypothetically would be giving him, and then towards the end of the month, that's why you saw that positive test. And I'm also curious, as far as Turinabol, would there be any point of taking it so close to a fight? Again, hypothetically.
No, listen, it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't make any sense. Not if I was a guy who was doping for a fight, having 14 days or 18 days towards the fight, it would not do magic for me. At the end because look, if you know a little bit about training, as you get close to the fight, you start easing it up. You start easing it up on the training. You start easing it up because you're making weight. You're pretty much getting ready to unload your training for a fight night. So it wouldn't make no sense at all. Besides, 20 days or even less than that would not, it will not help you at all. I'm just saying, it will not make a world champion. Simple as that. So frankly, the way I see it, the way the evidence points out, I mean, he was tested many times. He was flag. You have to understand, he was not only tested, he was flag tested, red flag tested, which means they would use every possible testing, any possible testing they had in their hands. In other words, they would do CR testing for synthetic testosterone. They would use, then they will implement the new testing protocol for the Turinabol. They will implement the biopassport. They will implement all kinds of stuff. So it really trying to make something the last 18, 17 days, it don't make sense to me. I really think it's either a contamination, a supplement has been cross-contaminated, or perhaps at a case of a bad protocol or test analytical procedure. So we have to sit down and wait. It's kind of early to say yet, but he doesn't point out to me that he was taking anything that will pass the test, or that would take any masks to pass the test. I mean, he was, like I said, he was tested plenty of times, and you have to understand he also had urine and blood. So once, for example, somebody takes a designer and they pretty much identify any of its metabolites, they would pretty much know what steps to follow next, and eventually they will break it down and it will come out to the name of the structure that it was not identifiable at the time. So at this point, there's nothing like that. Pretty much, they're accusing him in one particular metabolite. They're not accusing him of 6 different metabolites. You understand? One single metabolite, and that metabolite is the one that stays up to 7 weeks. So frankly, to me, it's awkward. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You know, obviously, some of the questions that you throw today, yes, it makes sense. Possibly something is up, possibly not. But the way I see it, I don't think he did anything wrong. So far, it doesn't look good, the test. As far as what I've seen so far, like I said, we still got to wait and see the B sample. You know, they're still working on getting all the data together. Unfortunately, USADA does not want to give the past results that he passed previously during the random testing. They don't give those out. Obviously, there's a way to get them, and it has to be through court. So that would be not up to me. That would be up to his lawyer, Jacobs. He's a great lawyer. He's one of the best in the world when it comes to defenses of anti-doping situations. You know, so let's sit down and wait. You know, let's sit down and wait, see what happens.
Angel, we really appreciate your time, and we're going to let you go in just a couple of minutes. Just before we finish up, you know, before USADA, many fighters said that they believed around 80-90% of fighters were on PEDs. But now with USADA around, what do you think the numbers are like today? And do you believe it was that bad before USADA came in?
Well, you know, frankly, before USADA came in, yes, it was bad because you have to understand that there was a lot of situations where they were not getting random or tested at all. Maybe one time during the fight, and that's it. They were not getting random tests. They were not doing any blood and urine. In other words, there was a lot of situations where athletes were getting what they call replacement therapies, which means normally when a guy has a low testosterone, for example, less than 400 nanograms per ml, you're entitled to, by law, to get prescribed testosterone. But you will see that on guys who are 40, 45, 50 years old. You know, obviously your body, there's a point where you start producing testosterone. I mean, you start reducing the production of testosterone. But at the time, you were seeing guys who were 20, 21, 23 years old. I mean, so my point is that that particular loophole in the system open up the what you call the wave of athletes to take advantage of it, and they were taking advantage of it. So obviously, yeah, there was a lot of issues when it came to the UFC, and not only that. I mean, boxing was even worse. You know, it's just that right now it's gotten better. Hasn't changed much. Obviously, there's a few random testings in places, but UFC USADA has been more aggressive into the testing for the UFC. So I think the percentage has dropped a little bit. Maybe I would say 45%, maybe 40%. It's hard for me to give you a number because I haven't done any statistics at all. But what I'm just saying is, if you have a more aggressive testing, more targeting testing, more precisely testing in every fight, then the fighters who are cheating or who are thinking to cheat, they're gonna have to, they're probably gonna think it twice before they even do it, because next day USADA might come and take blood and urine. So at least they have a little control into that, which minimizes. It doesn't stop doping. It does not stop doping at all. It just minimizes. It minimizes the window of cheating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious, it's interesting to hear that it might still be that high, to say 45, 50%. I'm just wondering, in that 45, 50%, what is the most popular PED of choice? What are sort of athletes trying to go with? And I'm wondering, sort of going back to that 2008 article you spoke about, can MMA fighters afford designer steroids like, say, in the Olympics? Or is it a case where the money's not really enough in MMA where they have to sort of settle for, something cheap, as an alternative?
No, I mean, why go so far into designing when eventually you can still take a lot of drugs that are there in the market that you can get in Las Vegas, perhaps, in replacement therapy clinics, and you still get away with it unless they provide a specific target testing for it. I mean, for example, if you go and start taking, for example, some testosterone cream, you might bypass the ratio. But if they don't apply the IRS testing or the CR testing, obviously you're going to get away with it. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with EPO, same thing with blood transfusion. You could take blood transfusion, but if passport is not applied to you, you're gonna get away with it. Microdosing as well. So why even go too far and try to spend too much money on a designer where eventually you can get everything in the market now, and eventually you can get it actually on the prescription in the United States. Not only that, but in Australia, it's you guys been having so much issues on your own. Pretty much it's been invaded with certain kind of underground pets. My understanding. Am I correct or am I not correct?
I think it's something that's, obviously you would be the expert as opposed to us, but I would assume the problem is sort of worldwide as opposed to just, restricted to, say, the US and North America.
No, it's worldwide. I mean, look what happened in Russia. I mean, imagine, look what happened in Russia. I mean, the guy who was actually running the laboratory went as far as and making his own products. I mean, this is worldwide. Don't get me wrong. I'm just giving you an example of what the athletes got access very easily nowadays on the ground labs, or even on the online research, or even through prescription. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy, and it's like I always said it before. If you go back to my Spiegel interview, I told everyone, where there's money, there's always going to be a cheating. Simple as that. I mean, you can't avoid it. Obviously, and I'm not saying everyone is cheating, but obviously we got our cheaters somewhere in there, Yeah.
Angel, we really appreciate your time. We could honestly speak to you all day and pick your brain. You're a fascinating guy to speak to, but I feel like we've taken up enough of your time, so we'll let you go. Guys, don't forget to follow the man at Guru Science on Twitter. We'd love to speak to you in the future again, Angel, but really, really appreciate you giving us the time and coming to the program, chat with us, and obviously giving your insight on this Jon Jones situation. So thank you so much.
No problem. Bye-bye.